Welcome back, Clone Club. We're breaking down Season 5, Episode 3, Beneath Her Heart. I'm Will Link, and with me as always...
I'm Megan Selenius. Hey, guys.
And this is an Allison-centric episode. It's about the Hendrixes. And it made me realize that every season we get one of these Allison-centric episodes, but last season not really.
No, Allison was very much taking a back seat to things in the last season. Given all the flashbacks we were having with Beth and Sarah being like semi-suicidal.
I mean, we had Allison in last season
Of
playing
course.
prominent roles, but it really didn't occur to me until watching this episode, like, oh, it's been a long time since we've had, like, a classic, long, Allison-centric episode that's...
Since she was campaigning, right?
Yeah, when she was campaigning. Like, those were some great ones. Usually those end up with clones playing other clones. That didn't happen this time.
Were amazing.
But, so it was really excited to see this episode. And also, when it began, there was the previously on Orphan Black, and it was basically a Hendrix greatest kills list. There goes Ainsley, there goes Leakey, there goes the whole Portuguese mafia. Like, it's all people that...
Just steer clear of this family. Honestly, just steer clear. Maybe you won't end up a corpse.
So, the beginning of this, let's talk about the flashback aspect of this first.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Because, like, it's a kind of common thread that's woven throughout the episode as Allison sort of has her epiphany.
Yeah, and you know, I never really thought we'd see Ainsley again.
I feel like this is a final season deliberate choice, because I agree. Obviously, we're not going to see Ainsley unless she's a ghost, a clone, or it's in flashback. And I feel like this was a pretty good use of Ainsley. It's when her and Allison's relationship was still in a very positive place is where we flash back to.
Yeah.
Back right when Allison is only just starting to learn about the clone stuff.
She's in major clone denial. Beth is trying to tell her, no, you're a clone, you're a clone. Allison doesn't want to hear the C word. And then Cosima comes to her door in an adorable scene where Allison is tripping on mushrooms and Cosima comes and Cosima realizes she's high at the end of it.
High? Your eyes are so dilated. Oh, they're like black orbs.
But it was really great flashback because one, like you said, you're seeing the friendship between her and Ainsley, and it makes the fact that, you know, she let Ainsley die, she killed Ainsley, it makes it even sadder. And we knew it was sad, but really at that point in Orphan Black, her and Ainsley already had this kind of strained relationship.
There was a rift in their friendship, and it was brought on by, you know, this sense of who can you trust. And she thought Ainsley was her monitor at the time. And of course, like, Dyad was being this super shady secret organization that was taking samples from people while they slept. And, like, That's not cool. So she had every right to think that Ainsley couldn't be trusted. And you can even understand on a lot of levels why she let Ainsley die. Because she's like, if this is a person that's, you know, very much just kind of a plant or a spy who was never my friend, then, you know, maybe this is for the best. But at the same time, and when we see this flash, for one, it was shocking when we found out, oh, it's not Ainsley, it's actually Donnie. But that doesn't change the fact that all of the Desperate Housewives type stuff made us think that Ainsley wasn't a very good person.
Yeah.
But then we get this flashback and we get, like, okay, maybe all of these people are kind of shitty in their own, varying degrees.
Allison herself.
Yeah.
Allison... When Allison,
she was a drug dealer for a while.
Look, when she shows up at the church fun fair, there's this whole thing of, oh, she's going to undermine you, she's going to undermine everyone. And I love Allison. You all know I love Allison. Her reputation is not unearned.
No.
Like, she does come in like the neighborhood terror of like, I'm going to take control of this, and this is the way it's going to be, and this is the way it should be, and I have my ideas. And she does come in like that. I could understand why people in the community wouldn't want to deal with her.
Yeah.
In some sense, but in another sense, this community's a little
They're all-
stuck up, and
they're
they gotta.
all hypocrites. I mean,
Yeah.
she lays into them at the end of the episode that they're all hypocrites. That lots of them are on drugs.
Well, as much as I was saying Allison has earned her reputation, she's also one of the only people in this community in Bailey Downs will point the mirror at herself.
Yeah.
And that's why, even though Allison is probably a colossal pain in the ass to these people, it's why she's still better than them.
Yeah, she is, and it's one of those things where you can see she is in fact a product of this environment. Allison would not have turned out this way had she not been raised in this suburban hellhole. But when we do get these Ainsley flashbacks, we really do see how much of a tragedy it was that Allison did lose her only real friend there, probably.
You also got a real sense of this, like you just said about suburban restlessness that she's dealing with, that has always separated her from the rest of the clones.
Yeah.
And we sense that even then, when she was on the mushrooms, she was starting to really feel that. She wasn't a cop or a scientist or anything like that. She's just
a housewife and a mom, and that's it. And even though those are things she very much wants and accepts and takes pride in, there's also this sense of like, why did I have to have this face? This face could have belonged to anybody.
It also, she lacked a sense of purpose, and it's something that, as we get later into the episode, discovering she was a clone, discovering she had these sestras, gave her more of a sense of purpose. You know what was really sad in the flashback scenes? Every time I saw Donnie, I was like, oh, you're monitoring her. Like, you're not taking mushrooms because you have to monitor her. Like,
Yeah.
you're like everything she's saying about how upset she is, you're probably putting in some notebook. And that was, because, Donnie's a character that we've done a real 180 on this show.
Yeah.
And come to really love and find their relationship adorable. So it was really kind of like I was watching that with that in the back of my head the whole time, like, oh my God, like he's monitoring her.
Yeah.
Donnie, you're the worst.
Oh, pass Donnie.
But let's get back to the present where Donnie is the best.
Yeah.
Well, the beginning of that, when we get to the present with Allison, is Simon, Rachel's new lackey there.
Now that Ferdinand's gone.
He tells her, you have no worth. He's feeding into what we know she already feels. And I actually think this was a really clever meta thing the show was doing.
Yeah.
Because to the point of when we started doing this a few years back, we always had a joke of when we got to the Allison storyline.
It was a different show.
It was a sitcom, The Hendrixes. And we would always kind of end our recaps with what's going on in that sitcom, The Hendrixes. And I think the show was well aware that Allison has been in this other world where she doesn't always, and it's been a complaint of ours, she doesn't always interact with the main story that much. If she does, it's like to get somebody a gun, or it's to do something like that.
Or in a lot of cases, it's her sestras coming to bail her out.
Yeah.
Because like she's in rehab, or she's running for city school council. It was school council.
It was school council.
But also is running drugs, and there's a body in our basement. Oh, now there's a castor corpse in our garage. So yeah, she's always been separated, and that's been something she's constantly had to wrestle with, of like, how involved in her sister's lives is she going to be? Because she keeps insisting, I don't have time for all of this. Like, I have my own life to lead. I have my kids to take care of. I have my husband's messes to clean up after. I have all of these community things that I'm a part of.
She's also longing to be more part. Like, as she even says, that she's part of this sisterhood. But
none of you will ever understand.
And she, but but she doesn't play as big a role because she does, in a lot of ways has more to lose with the family and with her standing in the community.
Well, I love the way she put it, or, partway through the episode when she's, like, holding on to the pills, and she's like, I keep thinking about Helena and Cosima and Sarah. Why do I love my sisters so much when they've ruined my life? And, yeah, they've ruined your life, quote unquote, but, like, wasn't it already a life worth ruining?
It was a life of a lie.
Yeah.
She didn't know who she was. She didn't know who her husband really was. But it when he says that to her, like, it hits hard. And then she decides she's going to go to the church fun fair and she's going to show him what's what. And she's going to show Nona what's what. And she goes,
little old lady.
Yeah, I didn't expect her to be like...
I was expecting another, like, Ainsley type.
Yeah.
Like, another PTA mom who's just, like, being all mean to Allison for no reason.
And when Nona puts her in her place, Allison does what most logical people would do, attempt to drug her. And
like, not just drug her, like, borderline murder.
Yeah, there were a lot of pills that she put in that iced tea.
I was very concerned.
If it wasn't for the priest coming over, she would have done it.
Yeah.
But then this still sends her into kind of like a spiral in which she falls off the wagon.
Yeah.
She runs into Ramon, and the two of them start drinking and smoking pot, and I'm all for drinking and smoking pot, but not when you're Allison Hendrix, who has been to rehab and clearly has issues.
Yeah, she definitely has been using drugs and alcohol as, like, a way to cope with the, as you said, restlessness with suburbia. And the fact that she's a clone. And all the murders.
Well, the other thing that really sends her over the edge is Chad, Ainsley's husband, comes over to her.
I never thought we'd see him again either.
I know.
Again, the final season, coming full circle, bringing back everybody.
And I feel bad for Chad because he has so much guilt about their little tryst in his car.
Yeah, because he's like, Ainsley kicked me out of the house because I cheated on her. And what I love, though, is that even though Allison is at fault, he doesn't blame her. He very much blames himself. He's like, if I hadn't cheated, then somebody would have been in the house at the time, and someone could have saved him.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because Allison tries to tell him it was my fault, and he's like, no, it wasn't your fault. Ainsley loved you. And it's just like that shattered my heart just ever so slightly.
I mean, and also seeing Ainsley's depressed children.
I know, right? Those kids
so sad.
Did not look like they were having a good time.
They were sad. Their mother's dead. They're at the church fun fair. They're going off to have a hot dog.
They're like, kids, I'm going to go get a hot dog.
It was
Allison robbed them of their mother.
I mean, she did.
Hey, kids.
But I like that it puts a human face to the wrath that is the Hendrixes. We love the Hendrixes, but yeah, you don't want to know the Hendrixes. They will fuck up your life.
Just steer clear.
But yes, she comes very close to confessing to Chad. Mm-hmm. And I thought for sure she was going to, but then, he starts saying what you just said about them being best friends, and she backs off from that, and she decides to go see Donnie perform Highland dancing.
Well, and Ainsley was the one, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but Ainsley was the one, ultimately, once we get to the end of the flashbacks, who encouraged, she didn't know what she was encouraging Allison to do, but she's like, if there's this thing that you think is bigger than all of this, you need to go for it. And so if it hadn't been for Ainsley's support, Allison would never be a part of Clone Club. She would have slammed the door in Cosima and Beth's faces and been like, I'm done with this. No more.
Joke's on Ainsley. She'd still be alive if Allison did that. Okay.
Baby.
Well, let's talk about what's going on up until his Highland dance. What's going on with Donnie? Because he's got big problems.
Yeah.
Rachel, they know Donnie knows where Helena is. I mean, I guess they don't know for sure. In fact, nobody I mean, us as the audience knows that Donnie knows, but other than that, no one really knows.
Here's a question, though. I think it would have been probably kind of smart to, like, I don't know, maybe say, hey, I'm going here, but if anybody asks, I'm actually in this location way far away.
You mean for Helena to say that?
Yeah! Like, if anybody besides Sarah asks, I'm here, that way that will buy me more time as they go to the wrong location to try to find me. That's just me, though.
Helena, look, I mean, she's a world-class assassin.
She also stabbed an innocent doctor. As far as
Helena's going through a lot. She wasn't no time to come up with some elaborate plan.
Stick was in, baby.
So, Donnie has this information. Rachel wants to put the screws on her because they want to get to Helena. Why do they want to get Helena so bad? Because magic baby science.
Because magic baby science.
They know these babies are
They
special.
want to replicate Kira magic.
So, basically, Donnie is holding this secret, and he's doing a good job of keeping it as they start to ransack his house.
If there's nothing else that the first season didn't teach us, is that Donnie is actually surprisingly good at keeping a secret.
And Art's there with Maddie, our favorite cop.
Like I said, if she wasn't evil, I would love her. I love, like, tough female cop characters, but because she's straight up evil, I'm like, I can't get on board with you, sweetie. No.
Well, they show up, and I also want to talk about Art here for a bit. I feel really bad for Art because
God.
Art is now being forced to betray people he's friends with, people, you know.
Well, and not to mention that the people he's trying to stick his neck out for keep having literal skeletons in their closet that he's only just now finding out about at the worst possible time. Like, really? You have a dead body buried in your garage? No shit. What else haven't you told me?
I know. Art's been, I mean, I think the key is always fill in Art immediately.
Oh my God.
Anything you do, so at least he knows. But he's there, and he's trying to manage the situation. Meanwhile, Maddie's going around planting evidence with Pouchy's blood on it and clone DNA, and he catches her doing that, but then she sees the different coloring of the garage floor.
Yeah.
And she believes it is a grave, using those cop instincts.
Cop intuition.
And cut to, we come back from commercial break, she's got a jackhammer going right into that floor.
I love that Art's not helping her. He's just kind of sitting here, like, waiting for, you know, the bomb to drop.
Well, then later he is shoveling, and then he's like, I gotta take a leak. I mean, Art just feels so helpless this season, and I'm assuming this is all going to gear up to that Art is going to take his new partner down in some way, because Art has to at some point become proactive in trying to stop this from within the police department,
well,
I'd imagine.
It kind of depends on whether, and we'll talk about this more when we get more to Rachel, but I feel like Art's, you know, sense of being proactive or not being proactive or being more passive is all going to depend on Neolution's relationship with the clones and how long the quote-unquote truce lasts.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's a point in this episode where he almost shoots Maddie.
Yeah.
Like, this close to murdering, having another person murdered in the Hendrix's garage.
You know, I thought for sure he was going to kill her. I thought that he was going to cross that line, which would have been interesting, because that's quite a line. I mean, he's helped cover up murders, but he hasn't just straight out murdered someone. Mm-hmm. And I thought for sure, just as we're learning that the cop should stand down, I thought for sure he was going to shoot her, and we'd be like, oh no.
For a hot second, I was like, is that where we're going? Is that where we're going? Oh no. Like, Art's going to just choose the exact wrong moment to take her out, and then Allison's going to be apprehended by Dyad/Neolution and, like, thrown in, like, their crazy secret prison. Yeah, so...
So, before you do Highland dancing, it is important to hydrate.
Yes.
And luckily for Donnie, he finds a delicious tasting iced tea.
No.
That he guzzles the whole thing in, like, one go. And he was thirsty.
Oh,
and
honey,
then
no.
he begins his Highland dancing. And he pulls an Allison from the musical in season 2, where he basically just goes flat on his face.
Kind of nice parallels, right?
Yeah, or I guess he went back, right? He fell back so we could all see his junk under his kilt.
You know, the most embarrassing way to you know, for everyone involved, basically. But I like that as a parallel that, you know, although I did want to know, like, what was he and Allison were initially going to sing Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Why was Celtic dancing next on the list?
Because Donnie's really good at it.
Surprisingly so.
There you go. I wonder if that was, hey, Christian Brune, what weird talents do you have that we could incorporate into the show? Well, I'm good at Highland dancing.
Or
I want to tweet at him. I want to ask him a question.
Or did they we want to make Donnie wear a kilt in front of an audience?
Can
you make that work?
That's probably more likely, just to get a Felix comment in about his junk. So he does this and he falls down. I'd like to point out, I wrote it down. I love the mirroring of the Allison play.
Wonderful parallel.
Once again on the stage, Hendrix.
Yeah, in front, opening night in front of a live audience that's there just to judge.
I also like that we are at the church fun fair and none of these good Christian churchgoers bother to help him. This man is passed out, and everyone in the audience is said, because these are this again, Allison's got her problems, but the other people are terrible people.
He collapses on stage, and their immediate reaction is like, well, I guess he's an alcoholic too. Like, their immediate reaction should be going up to help him and calling an ambulance, at the very least.
I only do my gossiping after the person has made it to the hospital. Then I begin.
There is a protocol. There is a set protocol to these sorts of things. First, you run up and make sure that they're all right, and two, you call an ambulance if you need to. Third, then you gossip and talk shit about someone. There's an order to these things, and they have thrown that order right out the window because they're awful people.
But Allison stands up for him, and she gives a speech, not only standing up for him, standing up for herself, and unbeknownst to these people, standing up for the sisterhood that she's part of. I would like to point out, though, in the speech that she gives, she does tell a crowd of people, she admits to selling them all drugs, which isn't
probably not the best idea in the world.
I mean, I know it's just a small thing, but Allison's always been basically they've put all the legal problems on Donnie, and I actually wonder if somehow that will come back to bite Donnie as his legal problems continue.
Well, here's the thing. She's right, though. Like, you kind of have to think about it in the way that she approaches Rachel. If anybody, makes a big stink about how she's selling drugs, then she is absolutely going to take everyone else down with her.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where this unspoken thing in the community will remain unspoken, lest Allison, as her family's going down in flames, just decides to let fire to the whole thing. That's just my thought, but you're absolutely right, because she did admit it out loud to a lot of people, some of whom I'm sure probably don't take drugs.
Like the priest.
I'm sure that there's a potential there for this to come back to bite them. But for the most part, I feel like if anybody's going to report Allison, it's going to be a bigger problem for the community than having her arrested.
You're right. They're probably not going to linger on this fact, but I did think I just made note of it. Like,
it's like,
oh,
no,
don't admit to a crime.
Stop. Don't say that in front of everyone.
So backstage, Donnie is vomiting into a bucket.
Oh.
Thank
That's
God.
so upsetting.
Thank God Felix is there to help out. And they basically realize, like, okay, we have to deal with this.
There's a time crunch here between the amount of time the cops are digging for bodies and the time they find bodies.
They're about to find a headless, leaky body as well as a Castor clone body. Sarah has already gone to the house, told Art the situation,
Like I said, just the look on his face of like, really, bodies. Bodies in the garage. Super.
So Allison decides she is going to take charge of the situation herself. She is going to take charge and take responsibility, and she is going to march into Dyad and have her one-on-one conversation with Rachel. Now, in this conversation with Rachel, it is mentioned, she goes, this is,
We've never met.
We've never met. Although, I think, and I meant to pop in the DVD to double check, but I was in a time crunch, I'm pretty sure in season 2, Allison posed as Sarah. I mean, I guess I wouldn't count that as a meeting, but didn't she pose as Sarah and she was like being held captive and she's like, oi, oi, Rachel, and Allison was doing her Sarah. I could have thought that happened.
But
then again,
that's not like a formal meeting.
That's not a formal meeting.
That's definitely...
This is the first time she's really meeting Allison.
Yeah.
And seeing them together really does show you how alike these two are.
They really are. It's one of those things you would never assume it, just kind of on the surface. But they're both type A.
Yeah.
They both have a need to control everything. They're both very much products of their environment, of like not great parenting.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they strive for a sort of status, the two of them.
Yes.
And that seems to be the most important thing to them, status and control of their worlds. And Rachel just happened to be brought up in an environment where that scope was on a much more, it was on a macro scale, whereas Allison was brought up to want it on a micro scale of the home and family, and Rachel was brought up to want it on a level of corporations and politics and, scientific evolutionary progression, etc., etc. So it is very interesting to see the two of them side by side for, like, in a real sense for the first time.
The look on Rachel's face when she opens up the bag, and I knew that head was in the bag, so I was waiting for it. As she's doing that, and she sees the look on her face was fantastic. And she is right. Like, Rachel she gave Aldous Leakey a head start. She was like, get out of here.
I decided not to kill him.
And
the one time Rachel chose to show mercy,
yep.
Hendrix is demolished.
Yeah.
Why must you destroy everything I love?
Their lives are so crazy. So, I love that scene because of similarities between them. And because Allison basically was like, look, you can do this, but what's going to happen? We're going to expose that, which I guess was always going to be the case. But, Rachel had to make her play to try to get the Helena location, which Donnie doesn't give up. And Allison, to her credit, Donnie is willing to give it up at a certain point, or he says he knows it and like maybe I have to do this. But Allison's like, no. When Sarah says we can't give up Helena, Allison agrees. And that's why Allison makes this play. That's why she goes to Rachel. It's because she is part of this sisterhood that's so strong that she is going to go. And it's a really kind of sweet moment standing up for Helena. Helena, who also saved her life last season.
And not to mention that, like, Allison at heart is a mom. And even though she can't have kids of her own, she's adopted children and she is very much their mom. And she also, even though she was exhibiting signs of being jealous of both Sarah and Helena last season, like, she's gonna protect those kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it was a good FU to Rachel, whose henchman earlier in the episode said you're useless, basically.
Well, yeah, and not to mention that, like, he's like, even MK had more value than you. But, like, ultimately, by saying Allison is worthless, you're saying that Rachel is worthless. Because, again, it all comes back down to their genetics. And this is Allison proving that she's not worthless. And and it's so fantastic because I don't think we've ever seen any other clone get under Rachel's skin like this. Yeah,
No.
she has it
Well,
out with Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah is always under her skin, but not in a way. Sarah never really. I feel like Sarah and Rachel are almost always kind of even in there, like going at each other. Where Allison, like, really stood up to her and gave it to her on a different level.
And more
because
often,
they're alike.
And more often than not, like, Sarah and Rachel, either their altercations are more espionage based, like
Yes.
one person trying to stay one step ahead of the other, or they're actually straight up physical altercations.
Yeah.
Allison doesn't need to do that. Allison just needs to drop a bag on Rachel's desk and go, "Come at me, bro." And that's all she has to do to get Rachel to yield at least a little bit.
The series started with Helena as an assassin taking out other clones, but I think as the series ends, we know Allison is the most dangerous clone of all. Let's talk a little bit about her last scene in the episode. So, she gets one up on Rachel, and, she's still, though, she's still feeling lost. She accomplished this thing, and she feels good now, but she's still feeling a little lost, and she wants to go away for a little while. This is also, I would imagine, the writers' clever and realistic, and I think it works way that we're removing Allison for the story from a while. I have a feeling we are not going to see much of Allison this season because of this.
I feel like that's fair. Again, the writers haven't always known quite what to do with Allison, as we've discussed. Like, it very much always feels like a secondary show. Two, I feel like, we're stretching Tatiana, poor Tatiana, so thin in terms of time and energy, I imagine. So removing Allison from the story gives them the chance to focus on more of the politics, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's
here's
my
the thing.
guess.
We are in an end game now, and there's no time to waste between what's going on with PT and Neolution and how Sarah's going to fight them and what truth we're going to end up getting discovered, that we don't have time to go to that other show, but we had to give Allison a good send-off. And
At
we
least
will,
for right now.
Yeah, we will see Allison again, obviously, because there's no way she's not in the last episode of the series. But you know what? Going off to see your kids, all this makes sense.
I even don't think we'll wait until the end of the series. I think it's just like a couple episodes.
But I don't think she's going to play a big part in whatever this Neolution endgame is. I feel...
Where the fucking Lost Island is.
I don't think she's going to play a role in all that. She had her moment of standing up to Rachel, and then she also got this sweet little... They sing Ain't No Mountain High Enough together.
Which is so sweet.
And I think that was the perfect little... like I said...
Kind of panning her story for right now.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think we're going to see much of Allison this season.
I will say, though, with Allison going away, my initial reaction is, no, come back. You're the only one that can stick it to Rachel.
Well, what I'm hoping, though, if Allison goes away for a while and there's clone room to spare, let's get some Crystal back into action. That's what I'm hoping.
That would be amazing.
So there are a couple other things besides Allison that we have to talk about.
Yes.
And maybe we'll skip right to... And then we have some questions. You guys sent some questions that we're going to go through.
You guys are so great.
But one thing with Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, in her scene with Allison, and even earlier, far less mellow than last week.
Well... I actually kind of want to disagree with that. Obviously, last week she was like Zen master. This was a little bit more like straight to business, Rachel. But like, do you want to start with the scene with her and Kira, or do you want to go straight to like her and Allison at the end?
Well, let's start with Allison because then we can move into Kira stuff. But let me just throw this one theory that earlier in the week that at Carla Producer 8, who I talked to a lot about Orphan Black on Twitter with, she brought up the idea that, remember we had talked about the scene where Cosimo was like, we're not going to take these pills to Charlotte, that wonders if Rachel's taking those pills, and that might explain some of her mellowness last week, that she's kind of zenned out on these pills.
I would totally buy PT literally drugging everyone to be happy.
It would also explain why Mud is so chipper down at Camp Revival.
What is your story, Mud? What is your story?
I mean,
I don't understand you.
It's the old,
You
like...
make me so sad.
It's a Charlie Manson thing of where he would take LSD, but he'd always give everyone else more LSD so he could control them.
I'm crazy, but everybody else will be crazier.
Yeah, so it's kind of what maybe PT's doing. He's like, well, I'll get everyone on my
I'll get everybody on my level.
Yeah, happy Neolution drugs, and I can control them. I would not be... I mean, that's something that a cult leader does.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, at Carla Producer 8, if you are absolutely right about that.
That's a fair comparison.
So let's talk about
Allison
and the lack of mellowness, or but you defend?
I actually disagree because, like, this is more... I wouldn't even say, like this is... Rachel was very composed in this interaction. And again, she's trying to take control of the Sestra situation. And when she opens up the bag, and yes, it is a priceless moment, but ultimately, like, she has to acknowledge, like, hey, this is a guy that raised her, basically, that she was going to have killed, decided not to, and then he ended up being killed anyway. It was, like, all that considered, there's a lot of, like, emotional baggage there. She could have gone off on Allison and completely lost her shit. But she remains composed, and she's like, hey, yeah, just dispose of those bodies very discreetly and back off on investigating the Hendrixes. And even though she tells Rachel that, or she tells Allison that she would like to throttle her, like, she doesn't do anything. It's not like she takes her cane and starts smacking Allison around. Like, no, she remains composed. And ultimately...
I feel like we're setting the bar pretty low for Rachel Compose.
That's true. But, like, at the same time, yeah, she's not like, oh, Allison, like, come in, like... Because they don't know each other. They've never been friends or even enemies.
And she does know, though, the type of personality Allison is. So she's going to keep that kind of, like, type A versus type A and be very...
Well, and the other thing is, again, this is a first real meeting between the two of them. And ultimately, it's still a power play. So she can't be all, like, one with nature or whatever. When she's making a power play against the Hendrixes, they have the cops really pushing down hard on this family. She can't, like, appear weak, even if she's like, everything's cool, guys. I think all things considered, she actually remained relatively calm. She's like, thank goodness for all those cult drugs. Otherwise, I would have gone off on this lady.
Let's talk about the Kira mouse scene with her, where she is calmer, and she's explaining about this mouse that will, like, basically shed its skin. And,
like a snake? But, like...
And, like, the skin will regenerate, so Kira is part mouse.
No, I don't think that's the case. I think it's more clone magic.
Okay, but it's a similar, whatever is in the DNA, it's a similar type of thing as this mouse. I know she's not part mouse. However, Island of Dr. Moreau people, human-animal hybrids.
No, you know what it is? Kira's Wolverine. Kira is Wolverine. She's got that regenerating power. So Kira's Wolverine. Or if you look at Logan, what is that? X2 something?
2-4?
Yeah, whatever. I haven't watched Logan yet. No spoilers for me.
Oh, it's good.
I'm excited.
If you haven't watched Logan, watch Logan.
But I mean, like, yeah, Kira's basically Wolverine, right?
I guess so. She basically has the same properties. Well, now here's the thing. So there's a scene with Rachel. I think it's very interesting where she's like, they tell me I can't trust you, and Rachel's like, do you trust me?
Kira doesn't answer.
Kira doesn't answer.
She's like, this is fun. But that's not a yes.
But I think that means Kira's more aware of the dangers of Rachel than we think. but I think Kira believes, and she's a little girl who maybe shouldn't be making these decisions, but Kira believes that she needs to find out things about herself.
Yeah, Go ahead.
Well, it leads us to the potentially creepiest moment of the episode, where Kira is left alone, and she pulls out a knife, to which I assume, and I was talking with someone on Twitter about this who also had some questions we'll get to, that she is going to cut herself in some way to see if she regenerates. Now, we don't see her do it. My theory is that at some point, maybe in the next episode or a very future episode, Sarah is going to catch Kira doing this. It is going to freak her out justifiably, and also make her a million times less likely to cooperate with Rachel, because what thoughts are you putting into my daughter's head that she could, like, she starts cutting herself. Yeah, slice off a piece of skin and it'll grow back. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I don't know. I feel like that's where things are going to go south with this whole Kira, Rachel, Sarah relationship.
I feel like it's not going to take much for it to go south immediately.
I mean, it already has. It before it's done.
They've been coerced into doing this in the first place, but I actually really liked the interaction between Kira and Rachel in this episode, because it's a side of Rachel we don't get to see very often, which is that longing to be motherly side of her, wanting this sort of connection that she's, for one, she never really had with her own mom, and two, like, that she's always wanted for herself.
There were some really good Kira scenes this week between her and S and her and Rachel. I think some of it is probably that as she gets older, Skylar Wexler's becoming a better, like, she's, I mean, there's some really great kid performances in the world, but a lot of times you wonder how much is, like, good direction and coaching. Yeah. Like, Jacob Tremblay in Room, he's brilliant in that movie, but he's so young, how much of that is, like, the director? And I think we're getting to a point with Skylar as an actress where she's getting older and probably is now more genuinely making more choices than she would have, say, in season 1 when she was, like, really
she was a little baby.
Yeah. So I'm sure that has to, like, because these scenes are really good. There's also another Rachel thing that is mentioned real quick. Leaky didn't write the book, apparently, his Neolution book. PT takes credit. I'm not buying it. I'm on Team Leaky. I think Leaky wrote that book because I think PT is a fraud.
I think they're all awful. I think they're all frauds and awful people who've done awful things.
But it's easier to look back fondly on Leaky now that he's just ahead.
He was a monster. He didn't do good things either. He raised Rachel to be the monster that she is.
There's also an MK memorial.
Yes,
and that
was such a nice, sort of beautiful goodbye for that character. A character we were hoping would play a bigger part this season, and then was very unceremoniously stomped to death in the last episode. So that was a very nice sort of goodbye, and you can also kind of see, you understand completely the rift between Sarah and Kira, once this sort of memorial is completed, like, Kira wants as much time away from her mom as she can get.
So, one last thing we have to get to before we get to some of your questions. Helena, the last scene, we see Helena's at the convent.
Yes.
We did not predict that. I know people were tweeting at me, maybe she's at Beth's apartment, maybe she's here, maybe she's there. We had speculated that she might be with, like, Mark and Gracie. She did go with religious people, but they're nuns. She was basically raised not well by the church. She is also writing now, because
I don't speak Russian.
Because she's writing in Russian, or is there a language difference between Russian and Ukrainian? There are probably some slight regional differences.
I couldn't tell you.
But, I mean,
I'm an ignorant American.
I'm assuming that's just, she's writing in that's her native language. However, she's not over in the Ukraine, is she? Like, is she at a convent somewhere here in America?
I mean, yeah,
Canada?
She could very well be just like in a nearby convent and just writing in her native language because that's her default language.
But you know what? Ending on that note of knowing Rachel wants to get Helena's babies, makes me very happy to think that I feel like, although I don't think Allison's going to play a big role as the season goes forward, I think in the end game of the series, Helena is going to play a bigger part than a year ago I would have thought.
Yeah. I concur with that assessment. Yeah, I feel, although it does make me very concerned about when she does give birth. I don't feel like she's going to take a whole lot of time after the fact before she gets rolling again.
So, on Reddit, I'm going to read this real fast.
Go for it.
It's not going to make any sense.
Okay.
Reddit, the page that she was writing in her diary, somebody translated it.
And again, this is Reddit, so we don't know if this is an accurate translation.
But this is the only translation I could find. You let me know what you think of this. But they are their own people. I have no control over that. What form they take, their health, the shape of their noses, they appear, then they will be children by chance. They will heal me, her, my little miracles. They must choose that horror. I think it's horror. And I've been looking.
You can read your own handwriting.
I've been looking for so long. How far we have come, how much road there still is, and that's all. That's what supposedly it says, which sounds like she's talking about what her miracle babies will do.
Which, I wonder if she's writing a poem. Like, if that, like, in her native language, she's actually writing a poem about her babies. Like, maybe.
I mean, she doesn't, I have no control over, like, they're going to be their own people. I have no control over that. What they're gonna look like, what their noses are gonna look like.
Aww.
I mean, so that's what. So, I mean, I don't know how many. I don't know if there are any clues in there for anything, but you know, it's interesting. Helena's thinking about.
I mean,
babies.
At the end of the day, that's all she wants right now. She cares about her sisters for sure. She cares about her sestras, but she also wants to make sure her babies are okay. Again. She doesn't really have the best sense of self-preservation because she's an assassin. So, like, this is how her babies got hurt. So it only makes sense where after escaping from the hospital, because she thinks Neolutionists are trying to get her babies, it makes sense that once she's made her escape, she's feeling a lot of anxiety about them and about their future.
Okay, I'm not being rude, people. I am on my phone because I am going to Twitter to see your questions. There were too many for me to write down in my bad handwriting.
Just tuning me out.
I heard everything. So, at thought that was a great episode. I would agree. It is, I think, one of those Orphan Black classic episodes.
I thought it was great.
As Hendrix episodes are. I mean, it's my favorite of the season so far. I know we're only 3 in, but he does point out where was Sarah Stubbs, and I was thinking the same thing. Sarah Stubbs not there to help Allison in her time of need. He asked a few questions here, which one, me and him talked about Kira growing her skin back. He also asked if Art and his partner there could become. Wait, is Angers his partner's last name?
I know
he's
idea.
Maddie, but he's asking if they could be love interests. I don't know. Art has a history of sleeping with his partners.
That's true, but he also almost murdered her in this
Hey, you know, at
episode.
the end of the day,
she would have to do a pretty big 180 in terms of alliances for that to happen. I don't see them as star-crossed lovers on opposite sides.
He asks, why is MK more valuable? Why was MK more valuable than Allison? I assume it's because of her computer skills.
I assume it was because her computer skills and her involvement with Helsinki and everything like that. Just the vast amounts of knowledge that she had. And obviously her skill set. She was a valuable asset to lose. It is unfortunate.
He also asked why were they, able to properly dispose of Duco's body, but they're still burying Castor clones in the garage. That's a fair point, which I am going to chalk up to. I love the writers of the show, but just kind of a little bit of a plot hole.
I'm gonna go.
I know why Leaky was buried in the garage, because that was all done secret by the Hendrixes. They didn't want to tell anybody. But there was another Castor clone that they could have just
done away with.
Yeah.
I guess they figured, we're here. Might as well.
Don't have to transport the body. Well, who would have ever thought that they would be like, that they would end up being so investigated and so,
And to be fair, when Duco was done away with, I imagine S took much more of a handle of that sort of situation than when the Castor was killed in their garage. I'm sure that they did that more as a group. But Duco, I imagine, because that was so personal to S, she personally handled doing away with that sort of thing.
He also points out we've never seen Rachel get scared like when she saw Leaky's head. And it's true, even getting like a pencil in her eye, she's always got this resolve of
this is the thing.
Because it's the acknowledgement of the Hendrixes are crazy. My favorite.
He literally walked into Diane with a hat in a bag.
My favorite reaction ever on the show is still Casima's when they tell her that Donnie shot Leaky. And Casima's like, what? Okay.
I'll say just again, it's one of those things where it's one of the few compassionate things that Rachel has done, and then boom, severed head on her desk.
Yeah. At Epic Skyline says, does the cop having the picture of Helena's babies prove that the doctor from the last episode actually was Neolution? I say no. I think that she was still just a doctor, but obviously Neolution went in there, investigated, got a copy of the sonogram.
At the very least, Helena stabbing that doctor in the mouth, there was definitely a police report as a result, and we know that there are Neolutionists in the police department, so it probably did not take a whole lot of doing for them to get that information, because it's part of a criminal investigation.
Had another question that I forgot, and this is actually one I want to bring up. Did Allie and Donnie just let Ramon get away with what he did? That's the question. Do you believe Ramon? Or do you... Jason Kellerman was someone... I trust Ramon more than Jason Kellerman.
I feel like you can't...
But Ramon is still passing the buck a little bit. I guess what's done is done at this point.
Yeah. Well, and he makes a good point of, he spotted an amateur and he took advantage. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where you can't... It's one of those, Jack Sparrow monologues of, the only people you can trust are the dishonest people, because you can trust the dishonest people to be dishonest.
Yeah.
So I feel like Ramon is somebody you probably shouldn't trust, but you can trust him to not be trustworthy, if that makes any sense at all.
Nicky D. Well, actually, that's something we answered. What was in Helena's journal, WTF? If that translation is right, if this translation is right, then what I just said was.
Yep.
And she actually also asked about MK or Allison, who would be more valuable. And she asked the question, is this the first time Allison meets Rachel? And I think this is the first time she meets her as Allison.
Yeah.
I believe
which
she
talked about earlier
portrayed
this episode.
As Sarah. So those were thanks for sending these in. And throughout the week, let's talk. Let's keep talking about the episode. One thing we didn't get, we still don't know what Delphine said to S.
Nope.
I'm assuming we'll find that out very soon, now that the Allison storyline's a little aside.
But whatever it is, the only real big contribution that S had this episode was saying we should lay low for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's words of advice from Delphine or if that's S just being pragmatic about the situation.
Another little thing, it was nice to see Felix and Sarah kind of be brother and sisterly
That's always
again.
nice.
And I'll just end on a little Tatiana Maslany news.
Ooh.
The trailer for her new movie Stronger came out. I don't know if you saw the trailer
I have
yet.
not.
It looks good. It's
what's it about?
It's about the Boston Marathon bombing.
Oh.
And Jake Gyllenhaal plays a guy who was down at the finish line watching his wife run the race, and his wife is played by Tatiana Maslany, and he loses his legs in the explosion.
Jeez.
It's a true story about that. And Tatiana Maslany looks like she's killing it in this, as always. You know, now she's going to be doing a Boston accent. She looks great in it. It looks like her. She's been in movies. This looks like the
Her
biggest
transition,
role.
like the going from TV star to movie star.
Yeah, I mean, they even, like, in the thing, it's like Jake Gyllenhaal, Tatiana Maslany. Like,
Yes.
it puts
Yeah,
her
girl.
name on there. And so it looks like, it's coming out in September, which is when Oscar season starts, when you put heavy movies out. I don't know if they think that Stronger could be an Oscar contender, but it looks pretty powerful.
A drama based on a true story.
Yeah, and Jake
that sounds
Gyllenhaal,
like it could be a contender.
Jake Gyllenhaal with no legs, that seems like an Oscar part.
Oh Lord.
So yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. I think it opens September 22nd.
Well, I'm gonna go watch the trailer.
I will be out of the country, but when I return to the country, I will see it.
You said September 22nd?
Yeah.
I'll be seeing Hamilton that night.
Look
Woo!
at that. So we got plans. So shortly thereafter, we would go see Tatiana Maslany in this movie. But I was very excited to see her in the trailer, and it is interesting because it goes Golden Globe nominee Tatiana Maslany. I'm like, oh, you're like, even with movies, you're afraid to advertise like Emmy winner. Like you don't want to advertise television in the movies.
I mean, you could just say award winning.
And also Tatiana Maslany. Not that this makes me sound like a creep at all, but apparently she now lives here in Los Angeles. So our odds of running into her. I know this because she said it on Jimmy Kimmel, not because I am stalking her. But
You might be stalking her.
I'm not stalking her. But she lives here in Los Angeles now. So our odds of running into her, say, at a cafe or a bar, have increased.
But would we ever recognize her? She's a master of disguise.
So, Megan, tell the people what you're up to and where they can find you.
You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. I am also on a bunch of shows at a network over called AfterBuzz TV. Check out tons of recap shows there. On July 3rd, we actually are doing a special Attack on Titan season recap with the 2 stars of the show, Bryce Papenbrook and Trina Nishimura, who play the leads. It's going to be so much fun. I also write articles for the Movie Chick that stick with 2Ks. Be sure to check those out. I also have my own YouTube channel called Silver Screams, where my roommate and I talk about horror-related things, which is so much fun. And also be sure to check out the Shadow Radio Recreation, where I do the voice of Margot Lane.
Nice. You can follow me on Twitter at The Real Will Link. And you can, Helena, you could also listen to my podcast, Will Sean Podcast. We had a great guest this week. This woman, Maria Howe, who she was in The Color Purple. She was in Hidden Figures. She's had a great career. She tells some great stories on it. So you should give that a listen. So yeah, we will until then see you next week.
You're